Fantastic. We can see about 100 active participants already. So very exciting to host you all. As the counter is saying, about a little over a minute left before we get started. So let's see. Today should be a very exciting session. Thank you all once again for joining us today. Fantastic. So as we can see, the counter has run out. You all so much for joining us here today. Very exciting to see 100 plus participants on this webinar. Now, I'm going to start by explaining very quickly what's the format of this webinar so that everyone can be aware. And then after that, we'll get started with the actual series of events. We're going to spend a couple of minutes in the beginning where the esteemed panelists are going to be introducing themselves. That is step one. Step two is that I'm going to be setting the context on why is this webinar happening? What is the macro challenges that the student housing industry is facing? And maybe we'll spend a couple of minutes on that. And after that, we have about 8 or 9 discussion topics that we're going to be discussing about with our panel guests as well. At the end of which, we're going to have a Q&A session where all the audience, any queries that you might have, our panelists will be taking turns and answering those questions too. If everything works out well, we'll be finishing off this webinar within 1 hour. So hopefully by 6 p.m., we should have this wrapped up, unless there are some extenuating circumstances. What we're going to do is that the chat panel that you can see on your right hand side, any questions that you may have, either challenges in accessing the webinar, any questions that you want to post to our panelists, you can drop it over there. And towards the end, we will be compiling all of these questions and asking it to the panelists. All right, so then let's get started. We have 3 very interesting guests here today to help us understand more about the student housing sector, right? So I'm going to give maybe like a quick introduction to all of them, or I'm going to actually allow the panelists to introduce themselves so that all of you can understand what kind of backgrounds they come from. So let's have our panelists like come up and speak. So maybe Saurabh, if you can maybe unmute yourself and give a quick introduction about yourself. Shan, can we unmute Saurabh, please?
Hello, that's Saurabh.
Yeah. Hi. Great. Thank you, Ajay, and the team for organizing this. And so good to see everyone on time. I know we were kidding around. That we need to start by 5:05. So we all are getting more discipline being at home. So good to see everyone. Thank you so much. And I'm Saurabh. Basically, I'm a founder at University Living. University Living is a global housing managed marketplace. Fortunate to be in the industry for almost a decade now. You know uh, we're in we started in UK, then Australia, then we moved to Ireland, covered Europe, and now from last 18 to 24 months we've been mapping and building up Indian ecosystem in student housing, and that's where probably I'll be able to add some value here. Yep. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Saurabh, for that introduction. Now, maybe can we have Saket Jalan please come up and introduce himself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I've been into student housing, comes with an experience of almost 15 years. And formally, we have been doing great the last couple of years, 3 years precisely. we have a team size of almost 650 people working along with us. We do both on-campus and off-campus facilities. Since we work directly with the university partners, so our customers are very much captive in the sense. And
I think we have some challenges with Saket's connection. So maybe we'll just give a minute or two for him to get back on track. Maybe in the meanwhile, we can have a quick introduction of Mr. Maki Agarwal as well. So can we unmute him first? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. So nice to see, 100 plus people on the webinar. When it comes to my personality, I'm a strong believer that every problem has its own solution. This is how I've been optimistic throughout my entire life. During this pandemic situation also, keeping yourself safe as well as sane. That is my mantra, to be optimistic during this pandemic situation and lockdown situation. Coming to my professional life, I work at Jain Deemed to be University, which has got an history of almost 25 plus years. One of the pioneer institute in India for UG courses and PG courses. So I work there as a chief manager of marketing and admissions. That is what about me.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Superb. So thank you guys, so much for that introduction about yourselves. So, for the purpose of all of our participants, the logic of getting these three particular guests, right, was that we wanted to make sure that we have one guest who is the student housing operator himself, which is Saket, as he's the founder and CEO of campus student communities. We wanted to get someone who's from a university who can share that perspective, which is where Maki Agarwal actually comes from. And we wanted to get one more perspective from an aggregator or an enabler of this industry, which is where Saurabh Arora actually comes from. Right. So that's basically, the logic between having these people in our panel. Now let's maybe go look at setting the context, right? So I'm not going to take up too much more time. Over the last 2-3 months, as most of you might be aware, it has been a very challenging time in the student housing industry itself. Right. One of the biggest reasons has been that the government has, gone into lockdown mode and has advised schools and universities to be on shutdown mode. And as soon as this happened, immediately the universities had to shut down their hostels. Students went back from private hostels, back to their hometowns. So student housing operators are facing extreme challenges in their business. Low occupancy rate is definitely one of the bigger challenges that is being faced. How do you handle your equation with your landlords is another equation. When is this industry expected to revive? Are we looking at the next 2-3 months? Are we looking at a reversal of fortunes? Is it going to take much longer than that? So these are all very challenging questions that the industry needs to resolve. And that's the reason why we thought this would be a good time to have this panel discussion, so that all of these topics can be discussed a little more openly. So now that's the context, and maybe let's get started with the discussion points right away. So my first topic of discussion is going to be around universities and how universities are planning the next 3 to 6 months, right? So maybe this can be a question that Maki can take. So Maki, tell us, what is the thought process in universities right now? We're hearing a lot of whispers and murmurs saying that potentially the next semester might not even be an on-campus semester. There might be a possibility of a complete remote semester where all learning happens digitally through platforms like Zoom and other such channels. So help us understand. So what are universities thinking about right now? Maki, 1 second. I think you have to unmute yourself. Yeah, you can speak now.
Thank you so much, Ajay, for asking me that question. Even this come to our ears also. Universities are trying to take everything online. To understand this situation, let us go back 3 to 4 months from now. That was COVID-free situation. 3 to 4 months back, when we had options for everything, and we also had choices to exercise those options. But during this COVID period, when you see, we are left with no choices. Certain things has become mandated, and we are left with no choices and no options. So
Correct.
that is how online, has taken a peak, taken a rise during the classes. I'll not tell it is a distance learning; it is a online streaming of classes, and that is
Mm-hmm.
the present demand for the situation. If you go back 3 to 4 months back, offline classes, that is the Gurukul style, used to run, and
Mm-hmm.
online classes were given a very few, the percentage of importance given to the online classes was very little. But if you
Mm-hmm.
see the demand right now, you can see dance classes online, see, fitness classes online, or drawing classes online. That is what the
True.
demand is. If you see, every obstacle has its own way. And
Mm-hmm.
thanks to this COVID situation, most of the education sector has been able to go online, and still not stopping their, imparting the knowledge to the students, and that too without compromising on the, quality of the education.
Right.
But for sure, as there is no substitute for face-to-face learning post
Mm-hmm.
COVID, what that's my personal opinion again. Post COVID, what I see is, there will be a blended model coming up by universities and colleges. When I say blended model, it will be a beautiful blend of online and offline both. Might be in
Mm-hmm.
Pareto's rule, 80-20 rule, or 70-30 rule, where,
Mm-hmm.
offline is given 70% importance and online is given 30% importance. But for
Sure.
sure, universities has to come up with blended model, and will come up with blended model, and it's nothing new in the market. Blended model is
Mm-hmm.
again not new in the market.
True.
Most of the universities used to follow this, but a very few universities. But I
Right.
believe that, the model what will come after this situation, COVID situation, will
Mm-hmm.
be much more effective and much more efficient.
Very interesting. So I think I'm just going to stick on to that one point that you've mentioned, right, where we're looking at a hybrid model, right, in the next few months or potentially from the next year onwards, right? Now,
Very correct.
I think we've all read the news report, which stated recently that TCS is looking at a complete work from home setup for more than 80% of their, employees in India over the next 5 years. Would you say that something like that might potentially happen in universities as well? Or do you foresee that majority of the learning will still happen in a campus, and the distance learning might just be a very small fraction of it?
To answer that question of yours, Ajay, see, let us understand that if distance learning would have been an option earlier, also it would have been a hit
Mm-hmm.
model earlier. Also, people would have preferred doing that rather going to schools and colleges.
True.
Uh, most who's who of the industry, let's say, biggest of the biggest universities in the industry, education industry. If you see Oxford, or
Mm-hmm.
uh, people like in Bangalore, Jain, or Christ,
Sure.
they would have gone distance learning. But distance learning are provided where you don't have your own campuses. It's only
Mm-hmm.
a offline model outside the city or outside the country.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely,
Yeah.
as far as we are reading in the newspaper,
Are you using my
Mm-hmm.
schools
internet?
and when we are hearing from the newspaper or from the sources, definitely, schools and colleges will be the last thing to open, because the
Mm-hmm.
crowds are huge. But
True.
for sure, another 3 months, 4 months, once the situation subsides, I mean the COVID-19 situation
Okay.
subsides, we'll definitely see people coming back to the, offline mode, and they'll prefer going
Okay.
to schools and colleges back.
Okay. So if I understand what you're saying correctly, then one of the points that you're mentioning is that we might not start the next semester very quickly. It might be a delayed start to the semester. Is that a possibility that instead of July, we're starting in August or September or October?
Definite. As of now, most of the universities have already taken a call, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. Before August or September first week,
Mm-hmm.
universities or colleges might start. But again, it
Okay.
depends on the situation and norms and terms and conditions laid by the government.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So that thanks for sharing that perspective. From the from the vantage point of someone from a university. So let me maybe involve Saket into this discussion. So Saket, obviously this has been such a testing time for student housing operators. So help us understand from your perspective, how are student housing operators reacting to this lockdown? Can you share some insights on that topic?
Uh, yeah, I've been receiving quite number of calls from almost all the operators in Bangalore. They are worried about their the leases, the students coming back, the students who have been staying with them and not able to pay the rent.
Of course.
And they are still not able to visualize to should they be continuing in the same business or they should shift to some other things. If if the uncertainties still move ahead, and say for instance the university is open by September, so you have a payment which has to be for almost 6 months or so without any revenue. So maybe the government has to come to some rescue for us also.
Of course.
So yeah, there is a panic among the student housing operators who are completely bootstrapped, or who have started with a very there with a angel funding kind of thing. So there are uncertainties now.
Definitely. Okay. So let me maybe ask you a question. And if you don't mind, like I'd like to hear the perspective from campus student communities. This is only because we have a lot of small scale student housing operators as well. And there's a lot of panic, as you rightly said, where occupancy rates are very, very low, at this point. So what is the average occupancy rate of a student housing operator at this point based on what you're learning from the industry?
Now it is quite very less. Almost you may say 5% to 7% people are staying.
Okay.
But we have some foreign students residing with us, so almost 15% of these foreigners of the total capacity what we have are the foreigners, and all of them have been staying with us. So we are just taking care in a best way forward. And we have another couple of Indian students who are also residing with us.
Okay.
So we are taking care for them in the best possible way.
Okay. All right. Okay. So for the sake of our audience, so I think the numbers that Saket has shared is that about 20% roughly is the occupancy with foreign, and about 5 to 10% is the occupancy rate amongst the domestic students. In case we have a data point from the co-living industry as well, where the primary focus is housing for professionals, where the occupancy rate right now is somewhere about 50 to 60% on average. So occupancy rates have come down across the board, so it's not just in one particular industry. Someone has asked, is it 5% decline or 5 to 10% occupancy? It's actually 5 to 10% occupancy, not 5 to 10% decline, right? So there has been a very mass movement out, right, from all the student housing facilities, where tenants and students have essentially gone back to their hometowns. So now let's maybe loop Saurabh into this as well. So Saurabh, you obviously look at the market as an aggregator, and you have a lot of data from operators in Europe and US and Southeast Asia, Australia as well. So what are you seeing at a global level? Are the numbers similar to what Saket has just described? Is it different in different countries or different parts of the world? We'd love to hear your insights.
Definitely challenging times. But as we all say, with challenge come opportunities. So lots of opportunities for all of us, especially someone like us who are who are like a tech platform, beautifully adjusted or adapted to work for home, even work at home.
Right.
So coming, internationally situation is same. Right. Only silver lining is that infrastructure is a bit more strong compared to India, right? But because we deal with students, and eventually there are travel bans, there is a panic across the globe, and most of the students have come back to their own native countries, right? But as Saket also mentioned, most of the operators or most of the student housing providers, their focus is on taking in-house residents, who is the current residents. So on an average, globally, 20-25% of students still staying back, because these are long-term contracts, and at time they get stuck, they couldn't able to travel, or probably they got stuck. So so across the globe, providers are really taking very good take care of these students, and that's where that's where student housing as a whole is so useful, wherein it's very different from co-living, it's very different from co-working. It's got its own nitty-gritty, and that's where student housing, I mean, in fact, when we started 9 years back, in UK, and how the industry got evolved from US to UK to Europe to now India. And I get so encouraged when to see so many student like so many co-living companies get into student housing, or probably having a block
Of
or a
course.
vertical into student housing. So one thing
Right.
which we learn, because this is force learning for all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
how we can adapt to these changes is very, very relevant, right? And
Mm-hmm.
across the globe, around 20-25% people still staying.
Okay.
If you talk
Okay.
about our major industry or a market like UK, Australia, Ireland, Europe, uh,
Mm-hmm.
numbers are more or less very much same like in India. And
Mm-hmm.
the operators have gone to a relaxed cancellation policies, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They have responded to travel bans and mandatory self isolation cases.
Mm-hmm.
Another
Mm-hmm.
another good thing which probably India can, we are in student housing operators in India can learn, that how we
Mm-hmm.
can utilize more technology, how we can have more automation and process in place. uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so because post COVID situation will be very different, right?
Of
There
course.
will be self isolation, there will be social distancing, and
Mm-hmm.
and the operators who will be imbibing these changes will be the clear
Mm-hmm.
cut winner. So yes,
Okay.
the situation is not very good across the globe, more like in
Mm-hmm.
India, but just that those countries are more evolved, and they have
Okay.
a better more mature student housing operators. They are still
True.
able to manage their operation in a better way compared to compared to an Indian operator which is in a nation stage.
True.
This is a very new industry in India, so yeah.
True, true. No, I think it's a very valid point that you said that I think the core behavior of students, right, during a time like this is going to be very similar. It doesn't matter whether they're Indian or European, right? If there's no reason to go to the university, they might as well go back to their hometowns, right? So I think what you're saying is that the trend is similar across the globe. And another point that you've mentioned, which is very correct also, is that student housing is relatively new in India. It's not yet organized. Whereas the other day I was speaking to a student housing operator in France, and their government has actually come out and given a lot of relief measures, right, to keep businesses up and running. And so they have like their paycheck protection program, and like government backed loans and so on and so forth. Hopefully, like even in India, something should be done by the government. But before we talk about what governmental interventions we can expect, maybe Saket, I can throw this question to you. How should a student operator survive over the next 6 to 9 months, right? So obviously it's an unorganized industry, like like revenue collections are at 5, 10, 20% of what is expected, whereas outgoings to landlords remain the same. You might end up having so many different people on your payroll. How should we handle a question, how should operators handle the situation?
Uh, yeah, this is the question which everybody wants to have a note upon. See, with the finance minister announcing measures to combat the spread of COVID-19 and the
Mm-hmm.
virus,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in the place for the next at least months, the need
Mm-hmm.
for student housing, co-living, uh, Indian businesses is to stabilize their supply and build a contractual relationship in order to manage the crisis.
Mm-hmm.
See, personally, my takeaways would be uh, we would carefully consider all the contracts to ascertain our rights. That is the
Mm-hmm.
first point.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what we what are our exposures if the building owners don't exercise of the force majeure?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, to be uh, if I understand the meaning of the force majeure, it's like unforeseen circumstances that prevent someone from fulfilling a contract or a rather act of God. There are
Mm-hmm.
dozens of circumstances or events that we class as an example of force majeure like war, riots, earthquake, hurricane, lightning,
Mm-hmm.
explosions, for example,
Mm-hmm.
as a force majeure events. Third
Mm-hmm.
is take care before invoking a force majeure clause or
Mm-hmm.
claiming that a contract can be frustrating, as these steps may lead your counterparty to claim to have rejected the contract.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The fourth point will be like while negotiating the contracts during the pandemic, be flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, Respective provisions can further outbreak. So your
Okay.
all your hard work can ruin you. The last point is have a clarity for the future cash flows.
Mm-hmm.
Accordingly, discuss with the new contracts. some of the example to close on this issue, like maybe you can discuss on the 50% of waive off,
Mm-hmm.
on the revenue sharing, maybe on the rental deferment, maybe a rental waive off, maybe deferment spread over 24 months. Because the majority of the expenses move towards the building lease amount.
Correct.
So these are some of the thought process.
Okay. Okay. So let me maybe ask you one question here. So this was one of the questions I'd asked a few of the co-living operators, in our previous webinar. In your experience so far, amongst all the landlords that you're speaking to, right, to renegotiate your contracts, what percentage would you say are open for such a renegotiation? And in general, what percentage of rent waiver are they giving you?
20 to 30% people are open to negotiate.
Okay.
And another set of 30% are okay. They are claiming that let us get back to you. We will think about and discuss with the lawyer and the family and come back.
Okay.
And the 50% are like quite. They are pulling themselves very tight, just waiting and watching how the things evolve.
That's a very tough situation.
They are also there are also too, because they have their EMIs. The government has given the moratorium, but there's no waiver, so they have also their commitments taken care.
That's a very interesting point. Like in the sense that, so I also feel bad for a lot of the landlords because at the end of the day, right, the buck is stopping with them. Right. So if you go back and renegotiate with landlords and convince them to take a smaller rent, but they can't pass that on to someone else, right? So the parents are getting affected, so the students are not able to pay, so operator is getting affected, landlord is getting affected. But unless something can happen to the EMIs, right, that the landlord is supposed to pay to the bank, it's going to be very tough for them, to take all of the brunt of the entire economic chain upon themselves. So hopefully, like we should hear something from the government on that topic as well. So maybe let's loop in Mackie into the discussion again. So Mackie, like student housing operators are obviously a very pivotal part of the entire student housing ecosystem, right? Now, how are universities looking at this? Are universities doing something to promote student housing operators? Are they giving some concessions? Are they helping with cash flow in some capacity? Or are universities just having too many other challenges that they need to solve? And this is just not a priority, for universities at this point.
Answering your question, Mr. Ajay, first of all, we should understand that how closely they are working together. First of all, the universities are working together with the housing operators. When it comes to working together, most of the universities are in close touch with the authorities of the hostels. There were situations where as Mr. Saket also mentioned, or it was previously mentioned that most of the students flew back to their countries or flew back to their hometowns. But for those who are staying with the hostel authorities, I mean with the hostel people, they are making sure, or universities are making sure that the rules and regulations laid by the government are implemented properly, whether it is in tandem with university or with hostel authorities. We have been seeing a very, very well team playing with universities and hostel authorities, just to ensure, and this team play is just to ensure that every student staying with the hostel are safe. We have been in our university, the only student housing partner is CSC, Campus Student Communities, and I've been following them from almost 2005 when I was a student in Jain. And Campus Student Community, as I I would like to express my sincere gratitude and sincere thanks to them and any operators who are working on those lines, because they have gone way out their capacity to support these students, whether it is providing them with nutrition food, whether it is providing them whether it is to lock down them within the premises, although they might not like it, or not allowing their own staff members within the premises without proper screening. Coming back to your question, these are just to see that all the students are should cope up with the present situation, and they should be comfortable with whatever resources is available with them. Even everyone is facing a challenge. Even I'm definite, housing industry is also facing their own, they have their own limitations when they're telling that they have to provide, they are unable to connect the rents from the students
Of course.
or parents, and they have to pass on the rents also. So
Right.
most coming to your question, when you see every institute has their own limitations again, because most of the institutions are self-financing institutions. So
Of course.
everyone is trying to find a way out.
All right. Okay. No, fair enough. I think it's although it's definitely like important and required, right? It's not really mandated, and I'm sure that we are looking at it from the perspective of a student housing operator and from a real estate perspective. But I'm sure that universities have another 1,000 different fires to put out from your side as well, right? So that's why I was asking: is it a priority or is it not a priority at this point? So I'm sure universities are trying their best, to help operators as it is as well. So let me maybe give a quick announcement to all of our participants. I'm noticing that there are a lot of questions which have been put out on the chat. We are definitely going to come back and answer all of them. We just have another 2 or 3 discussion points with the panelists, but definitely we're going to come back and answer all the questions which have been put out over here. So now, so far in this discussion, we've spoken extensively about what it's to be an operator right now. What does it mean for universities? What does it mean for landlords? But the star of this industry is actually the student, right? And the entire ecosystem is supposed to revolve around the students by themselves. So maybe Saket and Saurabh, can maybe share their views right now. So if, let's say, you're a student housing operator or you're a landlord or a university, right? Like if you're essentially in the business of helping students accomplish their, life aims and ambitions, how do you think the next 6 months, can go for you? Like, what are some inputs that you can share with operators or landlords on how they can engage or build relationships with the students, or in any way help students, in this current time?
Uh, uh, Firstly, personally, I'm optimistic about the student housing demand, despite a fall in the booking during the lockdown. Campus student community is seeing some interesting student research patterns and booking behaviors during this COVID lockdown. University leaders and housing operators and managers, both on and off campus, are now rightly focused on today and making sure the student and staff are safe. But what does the future post-pandemic hold is to be answered. There is already a very significant speculation about falls in university enrollments pan-India. Not only from the international students unable to complete prerequisite admission requirements in time for the start of the new academic year, but also from potential domestic students delaying their study rather than compromise their student experiences. Fall in university enrollments would obviously impact housing providers, both short as well as potentially longer term, with smaller cohorts working their way through the system. Firstly, in the longer term projections for growing worldwide demand for the higher education and international mobility are unchanged. Secondly, online learning will support that growth, but will not replace it as a student continue to demand face-to-face learning as well as other on-campus experiences. Thirdly, it's even suggested that for many prospective students, a lockdown at home with parents might even encourage them to study away from the home. and if you see the research by international bodies like QS, you would rather wonder that delay enrolling in a partial university experience for the academic year 2020 can delay for 2021, but the demand for the on-campus university life, I don't think is disappearing. And one of the most important, despite the challenges you all currently face in our day-to-day, private and professional lives are the reasons to be optimistic about student enrollments and demand for the students for 2021 and beyond. We need to be flexible and responsible to changes in the national policies over the coming days and weeks and support our students in their journey to the university.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So Saurabh, maybe if you can just unmute yourself and share your views as well.
So, let me go to the question and stick with it, about students, student being star, right? To keep it very short, this is a time to give back. We all been thriving because they are students. If there are no students, there's no student housing industry. There's
Fair
no
enough.
operators, there's no university, there's no one of us, right?
Right.
So though it sounds very philosophical, right? But this
Mhm.
is where it is. If we don't support them, we will not
Mhm.
sustain, right? They are short-term pains we all need to take, right? And we should be ready for it, and we should
Mhm.
support our students. Otherwise, the industry will, as it is a nation's industry, right? And
Mhm.
what we've been seeing internationally, this is high time that we take our students,
Mhm.
come up with the buildings where probably we're able to maintain social distancing, we're able to
Mhm.
have more technology, we're able
Mhm.
to have more trained staff to take care of
Mhm.
students. Because if students
Mhm.
are not happy, students are not taken care of, the industry will collapse, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes, we all have our own challenges, wherein whether to
Mhm.
we rent to landlords or whether to
Mhm.
collect our rents. But eventually,
Mhm.
as you rightly mentioned, students are the core of the industry. uh,
Mhm.
Few other points which we be observing internationally and especially in European countries,
Mhm.
is that uh, you know lots of things been focused on mental and physical health of the students.
Mhm. Mhm.
That is something which is always been missing, I mean, in India, and
Mhm.
primary, in landlord or probably in a real estate sector, right?
Mhm.
So we need to ensure that communication is very important. Whether we
Mhm.
could able to help, still reach out to them, at
Mhm.
least be
Mhm.
available to talk to them or probably to their parents. So there are lots of
Mhm.
anxiety and lots of if and buts, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
lots of remembering and lots of you know things are being floating
Right.
in every hook and corner of this country. So
Right.
we need to ensure that students have been communicative. We should be available for them, even if we
Mhm.
can't help them, at least hear them up and try to find solution. And
Mhm.
the more customized, because student housing needs to be customized, otherwise we all have buildings, I mean, what is the difference between co-living and student housing, or a or a shared economy within,
Mhm.
with other real estate aspect. So
Mhm.
that is one thing, and probably and it's not that we need to invest lots of infrastructure wise to be
Mhm.
available with the students, especially now we are, with this is a new normal where we are doing everything virtually. We are available online over the videos. So it's about
Mhm.
how you convey to your student, about to how you convey to the staff, how
Mhm.
they are available to reach out. And even,
Mhm.
and I'm very sure, and everyone agrees, and otherwise there
Mhm.
will no there must not be such a big turnaround that we will bounce back. This is just a short term pain, for next probably this quarter, maximum 2 quarters, not beyond that, right?
Right. Right.
But when we have decided to be into student housing, and where which is a capital intensive business, where which is a,
Mhm.
where we need to have a cash flow, so we need to
Mhm.
stick around. We need to be, I mean, this is a time, we get to know, who are the players for the long term,
Right. Right. Of
right?
course.
All the players which are probably trying to be in the industry because it's a land, it's a building is what you need, it's absolutely wrong. It's firstly you need
Of
to
course.
be take care of students and design your buildings and your policies and your business model around students. If
Mm.
that fundamental is strong, this quarter, couple of quarters will make you even more stronger, and
Mhm.
will take you to the leadership position. So
Definitely.
yeah, please focus on students, and that is what been thriving at University Living. We
Right.
always put a student first approach. We always ensure
Right.
that even if we don't have answer to them, we don't shy away, or we don't, and that's what any marketplace or any managed marketplace should be. How we can
Definitely.
ensure and take care of both sides of the industry. Whether it's accommodation provider or
Yeah.
students. Yeah.
Definitely.
So yeah.
Definitely. Superb. So actually, we had a couple of more questions, in the pre-decided list. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump on to some of the questions that the audience have asked for in the interest of time, because we have only about another 20 minutes left. So Ms. Namrata Krishnamurthy has actually asked a question: as co-living operators and student housing operators, do you think we have some responsibility to provide rent relief to tenants who are still staying with us? So maybe Saket, that is a question that you can take. Would you recommend that operators give some rent relief for the tenants who are still staying, or do you not think that we should be giving any rent relief?
It has to be like case to case basis. You have to explain them the the expenses which been incurred upon them. You have the electricity bill, you have the water bill, you have the caretaker who has to be also paid, and since the number are very less, whether there are 10x students or whether there are a single student, the utility bills are always quite high.
Of course, of course.
And the government are not going to listen or giving any kind of relief on the utility bills. So it has to be, maybe you can ask them to pay for some time now, and maybe later on, if they continue, they can give them additional discount on that. So it is
Right,
only
right.
only when you have a proper negotiation with the existing students can.
Okay. All right, all right. Fair enough. So maybe just to extend that answer to Ms. Namrata. So in one of our earlier webinars with a bunch of co-living operators, in general, people are giving somewhere between 15 to 25% discount to some of the tenants to ensure that, even in case something happened to their income stream, it's protected. A lot of other co-living operators who are not giving a discount, they have extended a facility to tenants who can prove a loss in income, right? In case, let's say that they got a lesser salary or their salary has been delayed, or even if they got fired, right? On a case-to-case basis, they are validating whether the tenant or the customer is essentially telling the truth, maybe through a reference check with the HR, or, to the admin office, or, by submitting a pay slip as a proof. But they're taking that as an example and giving off discounts on a case-to-case basis. Maybe that is something that can be useful for you as well. A second question from Mr. Gaurav has been around what's the general occupancy rate around the country. I think we've answered that question already. There's one more question here on post-COVID-19, and assuming, let's say, there is no vaccination in place, right? How should universities and student housing companies look at admitting migrant students who are coming in for education? And the second part of that question is, how do we ensure social distancing in classrooms as well as in hostels? So if any of our panelists can, maybe share their views on that topic. Without vaccination, if students have to come back for university once again, how do we ensure that migrants are taken care of, or how do you make sure that you let them in, and how do we ensure social distancing in hostels? So anyone can share their views on this?
Coming to the university point of view of the question asked, post-pandemic situation, I mean post-COVID situation, when the students are back, universities are definitely planning for social distancing. They might be planning for split timing classes. Let's say if the timing is morning 9 to 12:30, then they might split up to 3 timing a day, where students are attending, 1/3 of the students are attending between 9 to 12, then 1 to 3, and then evening classes also. That is one way where social distancing can be done. As I told earlier also, blended model will also help. It can be on a rotation basis. Let's say first year there are 4 sections, then 2 sections on a day can be taken online and 2 can be taken offline, and next day it can be rotated. There are ways out. As I told you, every problem has a solution. There are n number of ways out. But having said that, hostel operators also, there are expectations from student, and also where hostel operators can also maintain the same. Most of the time, they are crowded only towards the dining area, whether it is breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So if that can be taken care, when room services can be given, I think it can be solved.
Okay. Saket, sort of any points to add, or can I move on to the next question?
Yeah, more or less, I think we can move on.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So one more question that has come in from Tushar is that, do you see the tariff for tenants post-COVID decreasing, or how do you see the tariff movement? Is it going to become more expensive? Do you think it's going to stay the same, or is it going to decrease in price? I can see that Saurabh wants to have his view on this. Yeah, Saurabh.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something which we've been doing. We've been speaking with lots of operators. We've been speaking with lots of landlords, right? Who are landlords and operators, right? So as overall, the real estate gonna go down. The rent is gonna push down. So we need to adjust to the our normal yield. And that also depend upon what is your structure. Whether how much you have leverage your model, right? So, but definitely, tariff will go down. Interestingly, one way where the overall real estate rental is gonna go down, But that's where, you know, even the demand for students will be different now. You know, they will be looking forward for more single rooms. You know, they will be looking
Right.
for, as we call, on-suite rooms, you know, in
Hmm.
international market. And that will be interesting part, how operators able to, you know, manage that, you know, balance that act, you know, how
Right.
to reduce rent and still able to give more quality product. So that is
Very
where probably
interesting.
Saket will able to add more value, or any of the operator will be able to more value. But definitely, you
Right.
know, if I can share from the international experience,
Mm-hmm.
you know, industry will get more mature, even
Mm-hmm.
at the cost of, you know, less margins. But
Mm-hmm.
eventually, a long term player, you know, who is ready to invest now, will
Mm-hmm.
emerge as a winner.
Okay. Makes sense. So now let's maybe ask Saket. So Saket, from campus student community's perspective, you're an operator, right? So you're in the hot seat. So are you planning on a potential rent reduction for all of your tenants in the future, or do you think you can stick with your existing prices?
Uh, no, as I mentioned, I have drawn up five discussion point with my tenant.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, I'll add up another six also, and sticking to that. We're discussing on
Mm-hmm.
the 50 on the wave off. We are discussing on the revenue sharing.
Okay.
We're discussing on the rental deferment, where
Okay.
we are asking them the deferment, let it be spread over 24 months of period. See,
Okay.
actually, we are not giving any value loss to them unless until they do a waiver.
Of course.
Uh, but we just want to have some win-win kind of situation along with them.
Fair enough. So now let's
If
say in a
Yeah, I just want
sorry,
to
sorry, go
add
on.
in case I just want to add in case we are unable to get a clarity on the COVID and the ecosystem. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
the revenue sharing can be best option with them.
Right. So now
Thank
let
you.
me ask you a question here, right? Now, in a post-COVID scenario, right, it's widely expected that you're going to have to provide more in services. As Saurabh has mentioned, right, it's extremely expected that you might have to maybe do more disinfection or more cleaning to ensure the premises is better kept up. You might have to ensure much better quality in cooking services. So these are all things that are likely to increase the cost for you. Do you think you'll still be able to reduce prices given this context?
Of course. See, we have already started following the guidance uh, for the corona disease control,
Mm-hmm.
prevention, uh, and the local health department support, and it is not going to it is not going to increase anything. Maybe it can
Okay.
be recovered. So we don't find any uncertainty on that.
Fair enough. All right. So you're saying the operational cost might not increase by too much, so that should not be a very big challenge.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So the next question is a question from Ankur. He's saying in Noida, people are not giving rents because of the Noida district magistrate order. Now, what should be the proper steps in this direction? Now, that's a very challenging question. If anyone can answer that, we'd love to hear. Saurabh, Saket, Maki, any thoughts on this?
I was laughing because, you know, our operation setup is in Noida, next to Amity, right?
Okay.
So there are lots of rumors and lots of, I don't know. We still need to decipher whether it's myth or facts. But
Mm-hmm,
definitely, you know, I mean, and it's not in India. You know, it's international also. You know, lots of government have given relief to students, right?
mm-hmm,
Which is expected also. But
mm-hmm,
you know, there are cases where students, you know, are taking undue advantage, right?
mm-hmm,
Or so that is something, again, no certain answer, right? No
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
tips and tricks on this. But
mm-hmm,
I would say take case to case, and also seek
mm-hmm.
more clarity from authority.
Okay. All right.
See,
Fair enough. I think something.
I would add it. See, what he mentioned was right. The student are taking undue advantage. So you need
Mm-hmm,
a kitchen staff, you need a housekeeper, you need a warden to be paid,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
there's nothing charity. There's no government support on that. So if
Right.
you're not clear on them, you can just stop. Let the government feed them, and maybe the charitable organization who are doing it. We have to be little strict and
Mm-hmm.
understand the situation.
Okay.
Nobody is going to pay from their own pocket.
Right. Right. Of course. No, that makes sense. So I think something similar is happening in Hyderabad as well, where I think the magistrate there also has said, tenants should not be demanded, to pay rent, and there has been some confusion over there. I think in principle it's the same. What operators there also have been doing. They're taking it case to case. If there is a genuine revenue loss or a salary loss or income loss for the tenants, then they are giving some level of flexibility. But if there is nothing provable, right, they are trying to make the case to the tenants that they should be making the payments. I think one of the points that Saket has suggested is that give tenants the option of paying out, in case they do need a leeway right now, maybe you can give them the option to pay it back in installments over the next 10 months or so. Obviously, there is a very big risk that you take as an operator on non-payment, but I think that's the best that anyone can possibly do at a time like this. So the next question is from Mr. Yogesh Velani. He's asked, he's not quite sure how long it would take potentially to get back to normalcy in the student housing industry. I think we've briefly touched upon the topic where Maki said potentially an extra 2 to 3 months. So assuming things don't really escalate from here, we're looking at maybe August, September as a potential date of opening out of the new semester. Obviously, this is going to be subject to change from university to university, and if there's another outbreak, in the next couple of months, it might get pushed back. But we're looking at potentially September or to maybe get back to business as usual. Also, has seen as a land when the operator this as a force majeure event. Now, that's an interesting question because that's a question that a lot of lawyers have been discussing and debating as well. The other day, I spoke to a lawyer and asked them, would this count as a force majeure event? And that lawyer told me that if you're an operator, I can argue for it, and if you're a landlord, I will argue against it. So you tell me, who are you? So that's essentially, that's the hot take from lawyers. So any of you guys, any idea, like how to define this?
I see. I had mentioned. I will take this answer.
Yeah.
See, if you are, we also have been speaking to our lawyer, and they have been talking the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
See, if you go and understand the deep meaning of force majeure, it's clearly stated that act of God.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no mention in the agreement, you can definitely send the information to the landowners that we have to take this action, irrespective of whatever action you have to take. So there's no choice on that. It has to be.
Yeah.
If you don't have a revenue, we cannot pay it out from our pocket, and nobody has the money in their pocket also.
Fair enough. Okay, so I'm going to maybe quickly go through a bunch of the other questions. I think we have only about 10 more minutes, and there's a lot of other questions as well. But for the purpose of anyone who has put out a question, we're going to try and answer all of it, even if it takes an extra 10-15 minutes. But even in the chance that we miss out some questions, we're definitely going to get back to our panelists and put out all the answers in an email and circulate it to anyone who registered for today's event. So maybe give us an extra day or two, but we'll definitely get back to you on this. So, quick questions, and, let's hopefully try to run through as many as possible. Now, do you see COVID impacting out of state or out of city admissions and enrollments? Maybe this is a question that Maki can take. Any thoughts, like any top of the number? Yeah. Any ballpark figures?
Yeah. So, see, we were also worried about numbers. Every university and every housing operators will be definitely worried about numbers. But when you see statistics, definitely that's again my personal opinion. Mumbai might get affected in numbers. Pune to some extent, and Delhi might get affected to some extent. But when you see the student preference who are flowing from outside, that is northeast part of India, or West Bengal or Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, their preference is either Mumbai, Delhi, Pune, or Bangalore. And being Bangalore, as comparatively to these three states, I mean three cities, or Tamil Nadu, in fact in Chennai also being at a lower number, might be the turnouts of outstation student can get diverted towards Bangalore. But
okay,
if at all we see that there is other side of a coin. If at all we see that outstation students are not coming to Karnataka or Bangalore, then there is also a case where Bangalore students are not going outside.
True.
So somehow definitely universities, I see, and housing operators, hitting their targets or numbers this year, whatever they are looking at, with slow a bit, decreasing in Mumbai. But definitely this is the right time for housing operators also to highlight their USPs. They have to prove them that hostel is not just mere wall and bricks, and it is home away from home. If they are able to
Definitely.
do that, nothing like it.
Definitely. So I'm going to maybe club a couple of the other questions. I think 2 or 3 people have asked questions around the payment structure, right? That we should potentially put in place once once the admission seasons open again. So typically in student housing, it's a habit to either charge for an entire semester or for an entire year. So should we consider moving on to a monthly payment cycle, given that there is a lot of uncertainty? So is that a question that someone can answer? Yeah. Saurabh, you're on mute actually.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question, and definitely want to share what been following internationally. Internationally it's more of one-time payment, right? But then they give option of paying two or three installment, if not four. If you have a local guarantor, then they are, and that's where someone like us come into picture who help international student to get installment and get their guarantor sorted. But very interesting. One of the providers in Ireland, they came up with this offer. Probably because see, people are more affected in the short term or short to medium term, right? So rather than charging the full amount, probably if we can have installment which is like 10, 30, 30, 30, or probably 10, 30, 40, 50. Whatever some 200. That gives. Yeah, that gives, because see, students wants to stay in good accommodation, right? Their parents also want them to stay in good accommodation, and that's where our business model is, right? So if we can give them that flexibility, right, and without taking because cash flow is very important, right, especially for any operator, it's the king, right? So because now students and their parents will be expecting to be get more better service, or probably more safe and secure place. So cash flow will be very important, and if you can have some structure like 10, 20, 40, and again last is 20-30%, that will probably give lots of confidence to students and their parents, and probably will not take a hit in numbers comparatively. Definitely the numbers gonna hit this year, but yeah.
Sure. Okay. So Saket, are you guys planning something similar as well?
See, I will share maybe a secret sauce. We have been doing it. See, what we do is first 15 days, we tell the student that you can stay with the 15 days of payment. And if you're not satisfied, then you can discontinue. But you will charge for the first 15 days.
Okay.
But if you want to continue, then you have to make the payments at least 6 months upfront.
Sure.
So that, because this is not a hotel, we don't charge a very premium amount. We just work with a very shoestring budget. So if it is not a long-term stay, it will be a problem for everybody. So I think it has been working for us for multiple years, and it will work for all the other people also.
Fair enough. So I think that might be an interesting insight for some of our operators to take up and potentially come and take the competition to campus student communities itself after taking Saket's secret sauce.
But that's where I mean, Saket can say this and share the secret sauce, because the product is strong. The focus on student. If the focus on student, it's win-win for all. If it's short term and only try to make money out of it, this industry is not I mean, it's not a Ponzi scheme, or this is not a startup where you invest, you get valuation, and you move out. This is a this is like a tree. You need to water it, and then you will get lots of shadow. So yeah, and that's what Saket and operator like such who've been into industry for years are ranking upon.
Definitely. I think it's a good point that I think some of the comments that I'm reading over here also very rightly point out that the rates need not actually go down, because parents will definitely be willing to pay a premium for a much cleaner and a much better facility, right? That is going to come out of all of this, which also resonates with some of the points that Saurabh and Saket, both of you have made. And I think Mackie has also echoed that sentiment, wherein we need to move on from simply being a space provider, right? And not just say, okay, you're getting, you're going to share a 2 sharing room with somebody, right? So it should not just be from that perspective. Anyone who can actually give good services and keep the student at the center of the ecosystem can definitely come out of this ahead, whenever they come out of it. So I think I'm seeing one more question here, I think, which is a different question from what all we've discussed. This is around, I think it might be from a potential employee, right, of a student housing operator or someone who's involved, in this industry. Layoffs, salary deferments, and salary cuts. What are some things that employees can expect, both in blue collar and in white collar, in the student housing industry? Anyone wants to take this question?
I see. I would see what. See, we are just working on the deferment. We have assured the employee that there will be a delay in the salary,
Mhm.
but things are bad, so we are not able to make it as per your expectations. But again, once
Mhm.
the things are good, we will recover, and whatever is not unpaid, we will pay you. Maybe with a little extra amount for your loyalty and for your thought process. Uh, we
Fair
we
enough.
have introduced a concept of like bench.
Mhm.
So our people are there on the bench, uh, but we are taking care in all the possible way.
Mhm.
Uh, uh,
Okay.
Maybe the min. So this is what we have been doing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think maybe I can share one small insight that I got from one of the other operators, which is that for everyone who's in their company, they've kept salary cuts as voluntary. But anyone who takes a salary cut, they are compensating that 3 times over through ESOPs in the company. So, they're trying to justify the risk that employees are taking, by taking a salary cut, and they're trying to, like, compensate on top through ESOPs, which I thought was a fantastic idea, for anyone to implement at this time. So, that's something, Aniket, that you can potentially look at, asking your employer as well. So now, okay, I think someone has asked the definitive question, which is, how do you approach investors, during a post-COVID period, or even during a COVID period? So of course, like, investors are going to be a little risk averse at this point, but is there any insight that anyone can share?
I have
Not a good time to connect investors.
no. In fact, we are getting more inquiries from the investor than previously.
Oh, wow.
Uh, both in Indian soil and maybe abroad also.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I would just like to add on this thought.
Mm-hmm.
See, the relationship between an Indian economy performance and the desire to study is clear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For example, when the student numbers often increasing during the times of uncertainty, as students
Mm-hmm.
look up to upskill,
Mm-hmm.
like, so for example, 2008 economic uncertainty, when
Mm-hmm.
Indian economic growth contracted, application to the Indian universities increased by 30%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it is also worth noting that the proportion of young people across India that are applying for university has been steadily increasing. The
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
participation is also currently at a record high. So I don't foresee that the
Okay.
businesses are going to come down. So you have to
Okay.
be confident, and you have to just speak to them, just be open to them.
Definitely. Okay. I
and
think that's a fair
and
point.
yeah, and maybe directly approaching them, go through a good investment banker, so they
Right.
know the proper communications they have to go along with the investor.
So,
Fair enough.
to build on Saket points, absolutely. As I've been harping on, the quality of operators.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So uh, the lots of inbound interest always been around, right, for the
Mm-hmm.
quality
Mm-hmm.
operators and
Mm-hmm.
and the players in the ecosystem. So the
Mm-hmm.
next 6 months, how you pans out with all your stakeholders. When I say all your stakeholders, students, employees,
Mm-hmm.
you know uh, and the investors, right, will
Mm-hmm.
will filter you out. This is like a filtering process. How you
True.
plans on the next 6 months, uh,
Mm-hmm.
keep you apart from your peer competitors, whether
Definitely.
you're new player or you are a elephant in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
How you plans on the next 6 months, will give you a clear edge, leader position.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, so now I think that leads directly on to the next question. So maybe we have another 4 or 5 questions. So let's try to wrap it up in the next 5 to 10 minutes or so, in the interest of time. So maybe, Saurabh, this is a question that you can take. On an average, 7.5 lakh Indians go overseas for studying, and I strongly feel that this will reduce significantly in the next year or so. Saket or Saurabh, if you can, jot down your views. So Saurabh, what do you think? You're front and center in this industry.
Definitely. The numbers are 1 million. 750 is outdated 2018 report
Okay.
number. It's it's
Okay.
1 million.
Okay.
But it's very interesting because there are students who are going for short term exchange program. There are students who are going for
Mhm.
long term. So the
Mhm.
numbers, range between 7.5 lakhs to 1 million.
Mhm.
And it's a huge industry, but
Mhm.
it's a very challenging industry, right? And
Mhm.
that's where we have realized in last 10 years. That
Mhm.
um, how and especially when you are an aggregator, when you are a managed marketplace, you need
Mhm.
to cut down first the quality of supply. I always say that this is not a demand constrained market. This is a supply
Mhm.
constrained market. How you lock
Right.
supply, how you ensure that which provider you are working with, and how qualitative the provider is,
Mhm.
give you that edge in this industry. And that's
Mhm.
where these students come to you to seek advice, because you've been doing it for years, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's how our story goes. When me and my co-founder went to UK, and it's been 10 years, we had the bad experience, and
Mhm.
we ensure one thing, that each and every property on our website or in the platform are curated, handpicked, right?
Mhm.
So definitely numbers gonna come down, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it depends upon what market you are going about. Because there are
Okay.
students who are going, if you're going to Canada, or if you're going to probably Australia, there are lots of immigrants, right? They
Mhm.
anyway
Mhm.
have their family and friends, who they will be staying with them, right? So if I
Mhm.
talk about university living, yes, it will impact, it is impacting, but
Mhm.
overall, it's a huge market to be in, and
Mhm.
we are still on the tip of the iceberg. And yes, student will go down, but one point which we all need to understand here, that a student going abroad, it's a long time dream of that family, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they've been saving money for that, right? They have
Right.
their provisions, right? So yes, it will impact. Probably people will differ, right? We also see
Mhm.
the same trends where people are differing from September to January intake, right? But then
Mhm.
that's where, I mean, I would say, if I mean, I'm very opinionated, but
Mhm.
it's better to study in abroad than in India, if you can afford it, because at least you definitely, there are people who will take care of social distancing and all the infrastructure, right? Because India,
Right.
with the density rate, it's very, very hard to follow those
Mhm.
measures. So if you can afford it, and
Okay.
if you have planned for it, definitely, I
Mhm.
don't see dreams getting shattered, and students will be going, probably for this quarter,
Mhm.
or probably for this year, it will impact, but not
Mhm.
overall. The
Mhm.
number gonna go up.
Okay. 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 Fair enough. Okay. So maybe another question. I think we've briefly touched upon this. Do you foresee reduction in investments in the student housing sector going forward? Anything to share on that question?
Saket already answered that.
Yeah. No, but maybe like there's a lot of interest in Saket's business, but does that extend to the entire industry is a question that we need to see.
Depend
The
upon how
party,
you.
the party has just started. So those trust yourself, trust the business instinct, and
Yeah.
it is going to roll out at least 100x to 200x.
How you
Right.
pencil how you pencil in this next 6 months, and why I'm harping on this point over again. This is a time when you can't control uncontrollable, you can't control external, but you can definitely look inward, and prepare yourself, by imbibing
Mm-hmm.
more tech, probably having better property management system, probably by having
Mm-hmm.
more training for your staff, probably by having best, learning best practices in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
this industry in India is an initial stage, and this is a this is a part of co-living. So when we
Mm-hmm.
decided to be in India, starting operation in India, we were very clear that till the time we are not getting quality operator,
Mm-hmm.
we are not getting into it, right? Till the time, till the time there's a demarcation between co-living, co-working, and student housing, we are not open to get into the industry. But now, as the market evolving,
Right.
right, and
Mm-hmm.
also this market is evolving very, very fast and rapid. Lots of people are coming in,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is a time where we can hold, I mean, nature, I was hearing something, nature have taken a it's a nature holiday year. Right? So
Right.
probably we can use this year to look inward, get better prepared, because the demand is there. It's an
Mm-hmm.
amazing industry to be. It's a huge industry
Mm-hmm.
to be with. But probably next 6 months
Right.
you can prepare yourself for a bigger ride.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting point. Let me maybe just share one small opinion that I got from one of the other operators as well. I think in a post-COVID world, if you're an organized operator, right, who is actually building value, you will actually do a lot better. The real losers might actually be the PG operators, right, who are actually running in a very unstructured way, who are giving bare minimum services or not even giving bare minimum services, right? So the thought process being that this should be looked at as an opportunity to formalize the industry. So we're all aware that student housing market is pretty large, right? But this might be like one of those opportunities where we come out of this and we try to structure the industry, and the organized portion actually grows instead of having a very large unorganized mess, which is essentially what has been happening in India. So I think there are a couple of more questions around force majeure as well, but I think we've already addressed that. I think the primary point is that if you're a landlord, I think you can find a lawyer to argue for your case. If you're an operator, you can argue against it. But I think, in all honesty, it's very important that a landlord and an operator sit together and truly empathize with each other's situation and try to find a solution. My gut feeling says that this is not something that should be taken to a court of law, because it's going to take too long to resolve this mess, and there's going to be so many cases. Even if one person goes to court, that's going to set the precedent, and there are going to be so many parallel filings that's going around everywhere, that whether force majeure is applicable or not, I think you can always take a legal opinion on that. But I think it's a lot more important to truly see if the operator landlord can work together to come up with a potential solution. um, I think we have covered most of the questions that have been put forward over here. Maybe we can leave with a couple of concluding thoughts. Yeah, Saurabh, maybe you can go first.
Sorry, I was very keen to take this question, which Sanjay asked. To make the student accommodation and
Okay.
co-living concept attractive, a tax rebate proposal
Mm-hmm.
to government is necessary, whereby both rental quality qualify for IT tax rebate, right? So very,
Mm-hmm.
very,
Mm-hmm.
amazing question and a need of the hour. But before that, we are a
Mm-hmm.
step behind, right? Wherein this is an initial stage of
Mm-hmm.
this industry, right? Right now,
Mm-hmm.
we are not even clear, which operator will have to give GST or which should not be paying GST. And so when we are operating at that level, right, we need to, and this is
Mm-hmm.
even important. This platform and this panel discussion are important to come together the industry, and in fact,
Mm-hmm.
we along with few other operators and play in the ecosystem, form up a organization called as CEFI, wherein we
Mm-hmm.
bring all the ecosystem, all the player together, and we are proposing all these
Mm-hmm.
suggestions and all these points to the government and authorities. Yes, it's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
long, definitely not lonely fight, because we need to
Of
ensure
course.
that student housing is a industry in itself, like any other IT or any other vertical, and and we need to
Mm-hmm.
have a law and our structure very specific to student housing. Till the time we all are not coming together,
Mm-hmm.
and we are not all the suggestion and points are not coming up, we can't expect
Mm-hmm.
anything from the government if they don't till the time they can't identify a sector where we can see the
Mm-hmm.
employment and revenue generating coming out. We can't expect
Mm-hmm.
anything from
Mm-hmm.
government, to be very frank. So definitely, the platform
Right.
like
Right.
these, panel discussion like these are very important, and probably Ajay, team, everyone, a big kudos to each of us, wherein how we can bring this industry together and probably grow 10 100x bigger, because industry has just started. This is just started in the very first second year of the operations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
True. True. Very true. Very true. So I think we've pretty much run out of time. Maybe I can conclude with one of the thoughts that I heard from someone else, that primarily universities are going to be leading this change, right? As much as student housing operators want to be the leaders in this pack, I think we all have to take a playbook from universities and look at, are universities going to have an on-campus program, or are they going to look at distance learning? And a lot of what's going to shape this industry is going to come from universities themselves. And in general, one of the thought pieces from the US especially is that universities are in the business of branding. They're not in the business of education. And it's more important that you have a Harvard degree than the fact that you learned engineering there, right? And it's a very similar story in India as well. It's going to be extremely difficult for universities to get demand if they're going to become a completely online learning kind of a system. It's very difficult to foresee. I think one of the points that Maki has reiterated a couple of times during this session, which is that we might look at a new normal with respect to an online offline equilibrium, but we're definitely not going to look at a future where it's going to be a purely purely online learning system, which obviously gives case that there's going to be a lot more that we can do in the student housing industry with respect to organizing it. And another common theme has been that the next 6 months is definitely going to be challenging, but that might be the start of something beautiful, as the saying goes, where in the post-COVID world, the organized student housing operators might have a much more stronger and definitive role in shaping the future on how this industry goes. And for anyone who might want to maybe become a part of Safi or one of the other networks, do leave a note here in the comments. And I'm sure we have Saurabh or Saket, or like I think all of you are part of that network. Definitely it'd be great for you to add these members over there as well. With that, I think we can bring this session to a conclusion. So Saket, Saurabh, Maki, all of you guys, thank you so much for spending the time to be here with us. It was very, very, very educational. To all of our audience, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm going to go through the entire questions list once again. In case we have missed out on something, I'm going to circle back once again. So anyone who's commenting here, saying please add me, do drop your phone number as well, because that would be required for us to add you onto any of the other platforms. And definitely if there's any questions that we've missed out on right now, definitely we're going to go through that again, and we're going to do a bulk email to everyone who's registered with a copy of this video, as well as answers to all the questions. So until next time, thank you guys so much for joining us here today, and see you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.